사랑하는 아버님, 오늘 이 자리에 모인 선남 선녀로서 아버지께서 세우서 싸우니 영원하신 부부의 인을 맺기 위한 거룩한 식전 후에 당신의 무한한 사랑과 축복이 같이 하시옵소서. 영계와 육계가 주시하는 가운데 저희들은 역사적인 새로운 가정의 전통을 세우기 위하여 순환의 길을 거쳐오면서 이 길을 개척해 나왔습니다. 이는 당신의 창조 이상 가운데 본연에 타락하지 아니했던 선남 선녀를 중심 삼고 선한 자리에서 아담 하와가 하나님을 중심 삼고 하나님의 사랑에 의하여 참다운 축복의 한 날이 있었던들 하나님을 중심 삼은 선의 부모요 즉 참의 부모요 참의 자녀요 참의 가정을 중심 삼고 참의 종족 발전으로 진전할 것이었으를 뿐만이 아니라 참된 종족을 중심 삼고 참된 민족으로 발전했을 것을 더 나아가서는 참된 민족을 중심 삼고 참된 국가로 발전했을 것입니다. 그 국가를 중심 삼고 참된 세계와 더 나아가서는 영계를 합한 천주의 이상을 완성하려는 창조 이상세계가 우리 인류 시조의 실수로 말미암아 하나님의 사랑을 중심 삼고 진정한 선의 혈통을 조성하지 못하고 타락됨으로 말미암아 악의 사랑을 중심 삼아 가져가지고 이 반대의 악의 부모로부터 악의 가정의 혈을 모았고 악의 가정을 중심 삼은 종족애로
What is your name?
Kazu Watanabe, or Kazuaki Francisco Watanabe.
What's your favorite color?
Blue.
What kind of blue?
All kinds of blue.
Have you read Bluettes by Maggie Nelson?
No.
I recommend that book. It's about falling in love with the color blue.
Okay.
Have you seen Blue by Derek Jarman?
Yes. Any more blue questions? The most significant event or moment that I can at least symbolically point to for that kind of break between old and new is probably my divorce, which was a marriage arranged through the church, and which lasted several years after already leaving the church ideologically or in any practical sense, except that I have this relationship that lasted only or existed only because of the church. So I felt like after that break, after we had split up, I was finally on my own as an adult, away from my parents in New York City with no ties to the church.
Hey, Will and David, what are you guys doing? Oh. Uh-huh. Watch for Harry. Watch for Harry.
The thing about the church is that it defines everything about you, or it can, and it did to me, so that I had no practical understanding of the world, and neither did my parents. And down to the very rudimentary, fundamental basics of knowing how to live, like how to manage a budget, how to pay taxes, how to live and survive in this world and contribute to it in any way. So my life purpose has always been defined by the church, which is basically absolute filial piety and duty to the Messiah and to my parents. I had no practical sense of what I was supposed to do, and I didn't care. I was part of a holy mission, so to speak. They were outsiders. They were busy doing all these things that they thought that had value, which meant nothing ultimately.
No. Say I'm
Butterfly. The butterfly kiss. The butterfly. The butterfly kiss. The butterfly kiss.
This is Yokaichi, and Omata is playing with his new sword that Hiroko-san gave him. He's so proud of it.
My name is Abigail, or Abby Sayre. I'm from a really small town called New Tripoli, Pennsylvania, and I now live in Brooklyn, New York. I guess it's hard to say. It was like a long process of leaving, but by the time I was probably 24, I was like out and not looking back. I moved to New York City in June of 2008. Yeah, around that time I was going through a lot. I mean, I had graduated from college. I had started a program in graduate school to get my master's in childhood education, so I was going to school at night. I was working full-time as a new teacher in the South Bronx. I was living on my own for the first time. And I was seriously questioning my spirituality and questioning my allegiance to an organization that I'd experienced a lot of trauma from, and I also found politically pretty problematic. Even though I wasn't completely out yet, my world had I had been so expanded to the point where like the church became less and less necessary, and I could look at it more and more critically. So even in 2008, I was looking at it pretty critically. But I remember still going to church, like definitely still going to these big ceremonies at the Manhattan Center, you know, and right across the street from Madison Square Garden, and like when Reverend Moon's daughter was appointed head of the American Movement. I remember that, and I remember hearing her speak, and I remember feeling maybe somewhat heartened that like they had put a woman in charge, and I thought, okay, like here we go. There has to be a step in some kind of right direction. And by the time by the time of her demise and the sort of family's demise and the death of Reverend Moon and all that, I guess I was pretty much out. So I was trying to sort of create a distance from that, and while I was still getting sort of caught up in the frenzy of it all, it just seemed like a really obvious and old, like we've seen this movie before, it's like an old-fashioned power grab, like it just kept reminding me of King Lear. And like, so, you know, my family was definitely still in, you know, and so they're still in to a certain degree. So I still, you know, I still have to sort of manage those worlds too. Yeah, it was a crazy time.
That's dead basketballs. Damn, Ben's so good. Yeah.
There are a lot of expectations both on like a daily, weekly, monthly, everyday life basis and on like a grander sort of cosmic scale, right? So on the day-to-day basis, you might be expected to like get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and read spiritual books, you know, and sort of read the words of Reverend Moon so you can like live with them throughout the day. It would be an expectation that you would go to church every Sunday, that you would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning on Sundays and go through a ceremony of bowing down to this picture and reciting prayers and, you know, I was expected to, you know, go to summer camp and be a group leader and teach my younger brothers and sisters, you know, the things that I knew, and to give testimony about my relationship with God and talk about that in front of rooms full of people. I was expected to remain a virgin until marriage. I was expected to have an arranged marriage, have children. You know, it's definitely not a choice not to have children, which was another incredible like bombshell revelation to me as a young woman. I was like, oh my God, this is a choice. Like I don't have to do that. It was pretty mind blowing. And you're expected to like do God's will and sort of like restore the earth to its original glory before it was put asunder by Adam and Eve and all the, you know.
It's the one when you know, you know. Oh.
Of course, you know, as I started leaving the church and had to figure out how to live on my own, it was like really like starting from a blank slate. And I didn't have parents that could give me guidance because they have no idea what the fuck. You know, they were always, there's a degree of gullibility to allow yourself to be, I shouldn't say that. There's a degree of gullibility for them, which I think allowed them to be manipulated into this church, but which also allowed them to be exploited financially. They signed up for so many church pyramid schemes. They gave away so much money. So I had no idea how to practically live. Existentially, it was a complete void. It was a complete lack of understanding of myself or what I should be doing. I was always a little spacey, you know, and didn't have concrete interests. I liked artistic things, but not in any concrete way. So it didn't lend themselves towards any career path necessarily. My father was an artist who painted paintings and sold them basically only to church members. So it's like a fake job, and that was my frame of reference for a career. I had a complete existential crisis of purpose of life. I didn't know what it was, and I, in many ways, still don't.
Let's see, what did I think as a true believer? I'm gonna be honest, it's hard. It's hard for me to even recall something like that because I don't believe any of that bullshit anymore. And so I don't even, there's a part of you that's like, I almost don't remember. Probably something sad. Like I just remember feeling really, really sad a lot of the time. Whether you're sad about the fact that you've broken God's heart and you've sinned and you've done something so awful that it's caused pain, or whether you're sad that you feel like the church, I'm sure I felt at some time that the church wasn't living up to its ideals, so I was sad about that. And probably in time I was also just really deep, like, I don't know, I remember the last time that I really truly believed was when I got my heart completely broken. So I just remember feeling like I'm tired of feeling this way. But I definitely still believed at that point, so I just knew I was tired.
My name is Mitchell Ildo Henkin. So many things bother me, but then the more I think about them, the less petty they seem, because if I were in their place, it could very possibly have bothered me too. I honestly don't know when I left because it was such a slow process. I assume I left when I left New York, but I think bits and pieces of it are still stuck to the bottom of my shoes. It was faded by then. But it didn't make the feeling any less strong because it was faded. I was at the crossroads of, what do I believe? What do I believe? And I discovered that I found more comfort in nothing, in just the chaos and darkness of just the absence or the abyss of, like, oh, there's nothing there. I found more comfort and solace, and I felt more important and personally fulfilled of, like, oh, it's not all because of something, but it's because of me. It's because I matter, as opposed to being assigned worth. It still, like, pops up in my head every once in a while, like, just a constant emptiness that I'm still trying to find a place something to fill that God hole. Like, I found me, and me is great, and it is big, and a lot of the time it does feel fulfilling, but it's a process trying to find solace in the emptiness, and I do I built myself up, and what I do, I did because of me, and what I do for me, but it's weird having all the answers and then not.
So you steer by going like that or like that. And if you go like that, you'll go over that way.
There you go. All right.
Now if you point towards Daddy, you won't wreck into the...
Reverend Moon started his church in the 1950s in Korea, and then the doctrine of the church, as I was taught, is that my parents, were fallen people. They were not of a pure lineage, and that they had to, sort of atone for that by getting an arranged marriage and going through certain rites and rituals to cleanse themselves and start this new family, and that my sister and I were born because of all of that sacrifice and because of the spiritual conditions they made and the things they chose to do by following Reverend Moon. My sister and I would be born different. We would be born special and sinless. And it's this very, that's the magical thinking of it. Like, I don't remember ever getting a better explanation than that. Like, that somehow magically my body can, I am different. I'm spiritually different than other people. That I certainly believed.
It's a lot of pressure. It's so much. like what they believe is what my parents, they got blessed one another as strangers and had to go through this whole 3-day sex ritual. It's bizarre. Beating each other with bamboo, like there's all this weird shit. They believe they had to go through a lot of misery so my generation could be perfect and live happy lives. We, as second generation, had to be perfect. We were the perfect generation. In their eyes, we were going to be the gods of the world. But with little g's. They did a lot of specifications. Gods with little g's, you know, like leaders, but still using the word God. Like, and they believed the world was going to be perfect by the year 2000. When it wasn't perfect by the year 2000, it was our fault, and we had to do a bunch of like conditions and stuff in order to like correct that, and then it was going to be perfect by another year, and it just kept on, you know. I don't know how they're able to keep doing that. Like, come on, guys.
I was expected to be perfect. It's like a perfect embodiment of God's feminine love, and like make a God-centered family where my husband and I believed in the Unification Church, and we have children and raise them in the church and raise them to marry each other. And that in the world, I guess you're expected, like, they want more members, they want more people to hear the divine principles. So I'm someone who's like burdened with teaching other humans about the way, you know. It's a lot. It's a lot to ask of a person.
It was bizarre, like being, and I think that tied into a lot of my schizophrenic episodes as well. Like, if you're told you're going to be a god your whole life and you go a little bit crazy, you're going to think you're a god, I guess. Like, yeah, I don't know. The expectations were pretty crushing sometimes.
And therefore, you know, the job of the second generation, I guess, is to go into the world and to stay pure, first of all, to maintain that clean, that sort of like clean lineage. Like, there's all this obsession with purity and like blood, and it's really, really weird. And then our job was to sort of go out and form our own families and have arranged marriages with the approved pure partner and create more children and populate the earth with, you know, God's people. I mean, I think that's the basic outline, as nutty as it sounds.
That mission in our daily life, just, that's the thing, it was just daily life, but it was every moment of your life having to be the best person you can be. Otherwise, you know, you're not just failing your family, you're failing the lineage of all mankind. Like, it was up to us to be the platforms that all civilizations stood upon. Yeah, I mean, I really need to see a therapist. Like, I think that's going to affect me forever. The way my mom tells it, how she joined the church, she was going on this long spiritual quest. She was very lost. She was raised like Presbyterian or something. She was trying to figure her stuff out. I believe at this point it was the early 70s, like fresh out of college. And she said that she was locked between two faiths and she couldn't figure out which one she wanted. Unificationism or Satanism. She says that they are two sides of the same coin in a sense of both of them, for her at least, are very centered around self and like self-perfection. And she went with the Moonies and never turned back. My dad, no clue. It's like trying to get water out of a rock with that guy. Like, he is a man many secrets.
I can talk a little bit about it. There's still a lot of holes. There's still a lot of things I don't know from my parents' past. But I remember my mom was living in New York City when she was a young woman, very similar to me. And she got like a letter. She was taken to like Oklahoma. She technically joined in Oklahoma. She went to a workshop out there with a friend or something, friend of a friend. Heard the Divine Principle, felt really inspired by the lecture or whatever, she heard, and was sort of open to it. And then from there on, I think she fully joined. I'm not sure if she went right back to New York or if she might have joined MFT. She might have started living in a van and like driving around selling things. And then, she was probably 24 when she joined. And my dad, I know less about his experience because I know he's from out west. He's from Colorado. And I think he joined in Los Angeles. I would venture to, or maybe the Bay Area in California, which was a really big, one of those big places where the movement was strong, where were giving workshops and trying to recruit people. I'm pretty sure he joined out there, and I don't know exactly why. I know he left a very unhappy marriage. I know he was sort of in a position that I think a lot of people are in when they join something like that, which is that they're very vulnerable. They've been through some kind of trauma. They've experienced some kind of, maybe an awful event, or maybe they're just sad and broken, like a lot of human beings are. And so they were inspired by it and joined, and then they were matched at the New Yorker Hotel in 1982, 81. Yeah. Strangely enough, my mom and dad had one of those really odd experiences where my mom has always said that it was love at first sight, that she, Reverend Moon like pointed to this man and that she met him, and she's just like, I knew that I loved him.
They had both moved to New York for the same mobilization effort, which was a big rally at Madison Square Garden in the early 80s. I forget what the exact rally was, but there's a huge mobilization of members from all over the world. And so my father came from Japan, my mother came from Argentina, and then there was a matching and blessing ceremony in 83, and they both signed up. They were, I don't know how old, in their early 20s? I don't know how old my parents are. They were in the New Yorker Hotel in one of the ballrooms. Men were on one side, women were on another. Reverend Moon, with his divine insight, pointed to two people. They met. They had, half an hour to meet each other and decide if they want to go through with it or not. They decided they did, and they were married the next day.
It's like in the church being engaged. It's like your souls are now tied together, and then once you get blessed, which is like getting married, and then after that, for the first time, you can, physically touch a girl at all, really. Like, at least within my family, that's how it was. It was claustrophobic. But I got matched, and I realized over the course of that matching, it's just like, I am terrified of this person. Like, I think I really like them. Like, I might even love them. I don't know. I shielded myself from feeling everything because I was not allowed to feel that before.
Has anyone else in your family ever been blessed?
I have. My sister Ike. I have 3 sisters. But that's it. And the blessing had changed by the time I got blessed, and changed even more by the time my sister got blessed. So it wasn't Reverend Moon picking a man and woman within a room. Like I said, things had changed, rules had changed as we grew up and things went on.
Like, we would sit next to each other, and you guys probably don't see the shoulders up, but I was very tight into myself. Like, right now I'll describe, my hands are like between my knees, and my knees are together. Like that, all the time. I didn't know how to talk to this person. Like, I could talk to girls that were friends, fine, but there was like, just the implication that this could be something else was so overwhelming that I just collapsed into myself, and I couldn't function around this person. And it was after, like, she broke it, or she made it so I would break it off. It was a really weird thing. I'm not going to get into that. But it was after that stopped working out that I sort of, I think I had it. I realized that I was ruined.
No, never. I was never matched. I never went through the process of having my parents look for someone for me and arrange and match for me. No.
Did you experience a lot of pressure towards that from your parents or your community?
I felt more pressure from the community, I think, to go through with that than my parents. My parents were pretty patient with me. And I think to their credit, I grew up in a house where education was the expectation. It was expected that I would go to college and that it was perfectly acceptable for me to do that first and to wait, for matters of matrimony and all these things. And I really think that is a huge deal. Not everyone got those opportunities. I know more other people were pushed into fundraising or to get married really, really young. I know people that were matched at like 18. So I never had that pressure necessarily from my parents, but they did hint. They were sort of like, let us know when you're ready to find your special someone. And I think I always had the feeling and the intuition that if I made that choice, if I went down that road, that I would kind of be sealing my fate and that I would be in too deep. So even while I was still like in the church, I was sort of like, I don't know about that whole marriage thing. Like that, so it always felt, I was like, I couldn't quite get myself there ever, I don't think.
My older brother Levi and his wife Maggie were matched and blessed in the church. They picked each other. They went on a birthright trip to Israel on the same trip and fell in love. And then they told their parents, and the parents are like, yeah, sure, get married. And they got married within the church, and yeah, they're doing all right. They're about to have a baby. It's going to be cool. And my younger sister, Leanne, got matched and blessed to her husband, Jan, and they live in Norway. I don't think they're happy, but that might just be me projecting because I don't think anybody in our family is capable of real happiness. We are trying to rebuild a relationship. We were all very close when we were really young children. It really became like a us versus... My dad is a very angry fella. So this kids, when we were younger, all banded together. We became very tight and very close, sort of like protecting each other. One by one, they all sort of disappeared. I don't think I ever really had a relationship with my youngest brother, Benjamin. When you're like an angsty fucking teenager and you have like a sibling who's just then like becoming a person, you're like, you don't want to have anything to do with it. And I sort of regret that now.
We're all 2 years apart. I'm the oldest. I have a brother and 3 sisters. But I grew up with 2 sisters. My youngest sister was given away at birth for adoption in a church tradition called an offering child. She was an offering child. So my mother's best friend who joined the church with her in Argentina, his wife couldn't have children. So my mother and father agreed to have a child and give it to them for adoption. So she grew up knowing that she has birth parents and her parents, and she takes their last name and everything. She calls them mom and dad. So it's a bit of a strange relationship, but when I grew up, I always say I had 2 sisters because that's who I grew up with. And then in the last few years, when people ask me how many siblings I have, I say I have 4 others. I have 3 sisters because she is my sister. I just didn't grow up with her.
My closest relationship was always with my older brother Levi, but he sort of reformed himself so many times where it was just like he was super holy, and then he went on STF, and that's when he left the church, and he became an entirely different person, and it was just like I wasn't able to really keep up. And my younger sister Leanne moved out of the house when she was 15 apparently. I don't remember it, but that's what my siblings say. And my younger sister Mary, I was always close with her, but then I don't know. She went to Korea, I went to boarding school in Reno, and then we're all just now being like, shit, we have like 10 lost years that we gotta make up.
I don't know what it is, if it's the culture of the church or the culture of our particular family, if it's a Japanese thing. We don't call each other on the phone to say I love you, or we'll, text every now and then. I haven't seen my brother. I saw my brother this summer, but before then I hadn't seen him in 2 years. For my sister, Christina, who grew up as an offering child away from us, she doesn't know that that's our family dynamic. So I think she may feel that we're cold or distant towards her, when in fact that's just how we relate to each other. And my feelings for her are the same as my other sisters, but it's just the expression of that feeling that's different from what she may be used to. So if I could say I'd want a different relationship with her, it's for her to know that that she means as much to me as my other sisters.
I don't know what birthday this was. We were watching The Perfect Storm. I didn't want A Perfect Storm, by the way, for my birthday, but my dad loves that movie, and he'll get it any chance he could get. And we were watching the movie, and my dad was really angry at my mom about how much she spent on the birthday, and they were having this big old argument. My brother is trying to watch the movie, Levi, big brother, and he tells my dad, kindly shut up. My dad just walks over and stomps on his chest, and he had trouble breathing for a while. My mom called the police. The police came. At that point, my mom was starting to take my dad's side, and then the police kind of took my dad's side too. It was very much a, yeah, if my kid told me to shut up, I'd kick his ass too, sort of deal. And that was my birthday.
Well, Mark Apple, the last time he came in, he said, oh, next time you come in, I'm going to take you out to dinner. Well, number 5, so many new people that they want to check out with the guys again. It's like I told Mark, I said, this company doesn't even acknowledge that. Kathy, let us show you how.
I feel like I've gained some degree of wisdom since leaving the church. I mean, I feel like this is maybe a strange way to put it, but I feel like I aged. I did a lot of things and went through a lot of experiences that people don't have to go through until they're mid-age, or maybe never, if they're so satisfied with their life and the circumstances and their ways of thinking. So I feel like I have a degree of wisdom, but also an extreme naivety, both existing within me at the same time. Not everyone can say they were married for 6 years and divorced before they were 30. You know what I mean? And with that comes some level of wisdom, because when you're married, you have to step up a certain way, and you have to engage with another person in a very intense way that maybe you could have avoided all throughout your 20s when you're fucking around. But with that, the flip side of that is now in my late 20s as a divorcee who's only had one relationship in his life, one romantic sexual relationship in his life, complete naivety and not knowing how anything works, in terms of dating, in terms of romantic love, in terms of sex. And I think through that specific example, I think many parts of my life can be explained in that way, which is I gained a certain understanding or perspective, or, wisdom sounds maybe like I'm saying too much, but of wisdom and lived experience that makes me feel older than people who are my age. And then the flip side of that is feeling much younger than people my age. And you have to reevaluate everything. Stuff that people take for granted in the outside world, from their parents or whatever, you, as someone whose a complete understanding of life has been erased, have to question everything. And I'm still struggling to find out what the point of any of this is. And you take it step by step, and I'm not a depressive person anymore, and I'm taking steps to figure things out little by little. But what was the question? So the place in the world is a work in progress.
Especially.
Yeah.
There was no longer any room for me in that enterprise, in that community, in that church, in that ideology. I felt like I outgrew it. I thought, I can't be contained by this anymore. The world is too big a place. I had too many interests. You know, I was already definitely, became a feminist at college and was sort of introduced to other sort of ways of thinking about the world and thinking about like my place in it. So when I left, what do you leave behind? You do leave a community. I will say that. I don't have as much of a sense of community in my life because nothing is more motivating than having a group of people that think they're doing God's work. And that's a really powerful thing. And I think it's a really particularly powerful thing in America where we live far apart from each other and communities form still around like religious belief a lot. And again, like I said, that provides things to people. It provides you with community. It provides you with a sense, what people need other people. It provides you with a sense that you're loved and cared about. And so I definitely lost some of that. I definitely lost this sort of like thing that I could tap back into where people have known me since I was 5 years old, like adults in my life, that have helped raise me and experiences that I had with people. I chose to close the door on all that and I chose to remove myself. So that's a real loss. I also lost a lot of the shame and the fear and the feeling of never being good enough that accompanies trying to live up to really high expectations and standards that can feel crushing. So I've let go of a lot of that. And man, I've gained the whole fucking world. This is also what I say. Like, I also tend to say, like, I wasn't push or running away from that. Like, I was running towards life. Like, I felt like I was going towards this, like, wide, expansive world where, like, it was pretty scary. Like, freedom is terrifying, right? Like, it's scary to, like, realize, like, oh, I'm alone in the world. There is no God, necessarily. The whole story, that whole sort of, like, infrastructure that I had of the world, not true. It all sort of crumbles. What we are left with is, like, that means I can make choices for, like, right now for my life. I can make the life that I want, and it can be messy and beautiful and full of contradictions and not clean and not pure and there's no sort of like utopia that I'm hoping for.
I very much have a before and after. I have the before I left the church and after I left the church, and even people that I should be closer to now because they left as well. There's sometimes, like with some people, that a distance can be there because, like, I don't know if it's a subconscious thing within myself and them as well, if it's just myself or maybe just them, I don't know. It's just walls were built, and it can be scary. Now I know myself. I am me. It's not centered around anything. The foundation isn't something outside of myself. I am my own foundation, and I know who I am as a person rather than being told, you're second generation, your foundation is this, this is what you believe because this text says it. I believe what I believe because I found it and I believe in it. No. I don't think I would go back if I could. I don't think so.